Founders are taught to pitch relentlessly, but what signal do you now believe you ignored because you were too focused on closing the deal? So were there any signals that you didn't see about an investor because you were so focused on the pitch?
From my standpoint, and having worked with a few people on the call, I can be quite transparent and forthcoming. And I think that there's a balance there. And in thinking through some of the conversations that we had, I probably overshared and maybe was too transparent relative to the stage of where we were in a conversation. And, I struggle a bit with that balance between, being open and building trust while also still trying to protect, potentially leverage or clarity until intents and kind of outcomes are fully realized and aligned. And as you start to build momentum, these things can sort of move quickly, right? And you could find yourself, further down a path that is harder to unwind. But, I think it's just a factor of trying to be, more intentional about pacing discussions and really trying to assess sort of the earlier on you can, the fit alignment is key. So that was a good learning. I don't think it got us in material trouble, but certainly has helped sort of as we've moved through multiple rounds of financing now at District Cover.
One thing I share is that ideally you want to be getting a signal way, way before the pitch. I think the first mistake is if you're meeting with an investor for the first time at the pitch, it's probably not where you want to be. Ideally for us, for many investors I've worked with, we've been working with them for years, or, we've really built a sort of deep relationship, either prior companies or just knowing them around the industry. And as you're thinking to future investors, I think you want to be doing the same thing. You want to be constantly bringing them into the business for advice and to help, work alongside you so that you can kind of play forward, what it's going to look like in 3, 6, 12 months when you're actually working with them on your board. I'll give you a couple tactical ways that I think about doing that. One, for all of our investors and also angels, sometimes even prospective investors, we're doing a bi-weekly to monthly meeting. We'll have a one-on-one doc where we're kind of talking about here are all the things that we're working against together. It'll start with a small, investor update, and then also talk about, what can we build and do together? What are the asks? What are the top things on my priorities? And some of that is lower touch of, monthly investor updates via email, but the sort of one-on-one docs and meeting more regularly with a handful of folks that you want to be close advisors to the business, some of which are current investors and some in the future, I think is one way to make it a little more tactical. And then I think you can also do sort of ad hoc sessions. So even, as recently as this past week, with a couple of folks that have been really close to the business and wanting to sort of help accelerate what we're doing. So you get excited, you start to just jam on what does 2026 look like together. And so, we spent a little bit of time with a handful of different investors just talking about, where we want to go in 2026. And a few questions I think were really helpful to think about was, hey, for your product roadmap, not what are you selling in 2026, but what's the vision you're going to be selling to your customers in 2027? And how do you think about kind of getting to that? How do you think about redesigning the org chart to achieve everything you want to? How do you think about, moving your year goal and making it a 6-month goal? What would need to happen to do that? And I think those types of kind of conversations can really help you, one, get a lot of signal around working with that person, and two, along the way they're gonna have a lot more context to be able to help you as well.
That's a great point. And I was just thinking that same thing is if you're going way in advance talking about the vision, the greater your chances to leverage all of the expertise that they have to help shape that vision too, because you'll learn some things that maybe you're making assumptions or whatever that is, the clarity. Excellent advice and getting in there early on. Even if they might not even be a viable partner, there's still so much value to be had from having those early conversations. Joe, I know you were shaking your head a lot on what Jamie was saying. Was there anything you wanted to add onto that?
I would say the constant storytelling there, Marissa, is really, really important. And, whether it's your current investor panel or future investor panel, or even folks that can be accretive to your business in some way, as long as you're kind of keeping them updated and being respectful and of seeking their advice or counsel or just perspectives on the business, I think it helps you get a better panel of current and future investors, but B, really create durable value. And really agree with what Jamie was saying there. It's really insightful.